I just wanted to share a quick perspective on the recent Help to Buy scheme announced by the federal government this last week, which I think on the first glance is like a good initiative in many ways to help first home buyers get into the market. But I do think that unfortunately it's going to have some interesting consequences for prices, which probably was an unintended consequence of this government policy. So bit of context for those who don't know. So the Help to Buy scheme was announced in this week's federal budget, where the government is going to be powering 40,000 new first home buyers. So basically 10,000 buyers a year over the next 4 years. And how it works is they're essentially powering them with 40% of the purchase price. So if you're a first home buyer and you've got a 2% deposit, the government will provide 40% as an equity contribution towards purchasing that property in exchange for up to a 40% stake in the property. What this means is basically the first home buyer will borrow the remaining 60 or 58% of the purchase price and keep 60 odd percent of the equity in that property. So it's a very interesting scheme, but I think it's going to have some unintended consequences in some segments of the market. So to put it in context, there's about 530,000 odd sales in Australia each year, which sounds like a big number, and it sounds like this 10,000 figure wouldn't really move the needle. But when you drill into the actual sub-markets that first home buyers are really active in, I think it's going to have some pretty interesting consequences. So each year, about 130,000 first home buyers buy property in Australia. Now that's concentrated in certain markets and certain sub-markets at a high level. Most of that is concentrated in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And if you look at the price points at which first home buyers are buying, they're generally buying properties priced at $1 million or under $1 million. Now, if you look at properties that sell in those markets under $1 million, there's only about 200 odd thousand properties each year that sell at that price point. And you've got about 130,000 first home buyers competing for it, as are investors and everyone else. So when you take 10,000 buyers who are suddenly supercharged by the government, who can really afford to pay 40% more than what they otherwise could, I think it's going to have some pretty significant impacts on the market in units and in properties that are priced more generally under $1 million in good metropolitan locations. So really, really interesting space to watch. We've actually produced a sort of report about this, talking about some of those areas where investors are buying, talking about some of those areas where first home buyers are buying, and some of those ways in which we're likely to see some significant price increases as a result of this policy when it comes into effect later this year. So we've got a brilliant report that covers all of this. So check it out online. Link in the comments below. Thanks for watching.